This meeting is being recorded.
All right. So going to our resources. And for those of you who just joined us, I was talking about how today we are going to review those keywords and phrases because I want them to be sort of second nature. When you see something in the scenario, utilizing one of those from this document here, I want for that to automatically trigger a certain set of strategies that you might use or something that you might take into consideration, making one activity or assessment or strategy better than the other. So we're going to look at that, and then we're going to review competency 6. And it's an important one, and it's actually one where I can describe to you one of the classes where the teacher did this really well, and so there was no sort of loss of time for instruction. And then we'll do some more from our long list of practice questions. And so here are the strategies. We'll use the strategies again. Reading the questions mindfully, right? Because these questions, they've paid a lot of money. Pearson pays these writers so much money, and then they test them, and they don't test them and let them go if they're super easy. It has to be like in a sweet spot where 60% fail and 40% pass, or the other way around. They want it to be so neck and neck where it's very difficult, but not impossible. So that's why these questions are very difficult, but they're not impossible. And the way to sort of beat the trickiness of the exam, which I think is unnecessary because pedagogy already is a science and quite challenging on its own. So reading the questions mindfully, the scenarios, and that reading everything mindfully includes reading your answer choices, because sometimes some keywords and phrases within a particular answer choice make it wrong, make it not the best answer because it goes against other keywords and phrases from the scenario. So just mindfully reading all of it. Keeping the goal for the teacher in the scenario or the goal for the students, because sometimes it's, the student is the center of the scenario. In any event, what is the goal trying to be achieved in this scenario pedagogically? Is it about instruction and planning or of assessment for all students? Is it about creating a positive classroom climate? Is it about implementing effective responsive instruction and feedback? Or is it about, doing our professional responsibilities and legal responsibilities? So sort of like trying to figure out what are they doing here? What's the goal? What keywords and phrases are red flags to you, made you sort of like identify what a little bit the goal is, or you're saying to yourself, this needs to be investigated a little bit more. When they give us details about the students, detailed about when the lesson takes place, details about procedures or lack of procedures, they're trying to give us hints. They're trying to specifically state the scenario for you. And in the real life, it is quite varied as well, right? Think of all of our students and what we know from Standard 1 and Domain 1. Our students are all different. Diversity is just, variation, right? And there's so much variation above it amongst our students, based on their skills, based on their language proficiency, their cognitive development, their social emotional development. So much variation, even the types of support that they have at home, the types of homes that they come from. It's very common for some kids, especially, and I don't know why, in junior high times or maybe even high school, to live with their grandparents. And so it's not the same exactly support system that maybe someone else has, and all of that sort of you have to take into consideration and make sure that you're providing necessary outreach and support so that nothing is lost as far as student mastery. So let's take a look at this again and review the keywords and phrases, what we should try to think about. And so I would like for you to, because you guys can read what's on the other end, but so I'm going to show you the word and a little bit underneath it, and you should already begin to remember what you should think of. And if you remember other things that aren't there, I'd like for you to say them out loud, just because this is not an all-encompassing list, especially not with our ELLs, with the slide for ELLs. So when you see most appropriate, what does that tell you? And that's just an open-ended question. What should that alert you to? Most appropriate, best response, best strategy. What should that tell you, or what should you think of as you're reading the scenario?
They're looking for the best one, because in the answer choices, there'll be some that are going to be the ones that we should answer, but we're looking for the best, for the most appropriate.
Right. So exactly. So when they say most appropriate, it is because they've given you, and I'll sort of like just utilize my handy dandy thing. I'm going to do it here. So they're looking for, the goal is most appropriate, right? Most appropriate. And then answer choice B might be appropriate, and C like relevant, right? And D completely wrong, right? So you'll have some variation of this, but you're going to get a most appropriate and an appropriate for sure. You will, especially if they tell you most appropriate. That means that they know they've given you more than one appropriate answer choice, meaning it's not completely wrong, but there is the best answer choice. Like you said, Ms. Ramos, I believe there is a best answer choice based on the specifics, based on the goal for the teacher in the scenario, based on the keywords and phrases. So making sure that we keep that in mind, very important. Okay, age group. When they give you an age group or grade level, if they say Miss Sauceda's 7th grade class, or Miss Ramos's kindergarten class, or Miss Sauceda has a group of 5 and 6-year-olds. So they didn't give you a grade level, but they gave you an age group. And so you should know 5 and 6-year-old is what grade level?
Kinder, pre-K 4 and 5-year-old kinder.
Kinder, that's right. So it's 5 and 6 are typically going to be kindergartners. 6 and 7 are typically going to be first graders. And I've seen it. My daughter was 6 in the beginning of the year, and now she's 7. She was 6 and 7. And so she's in first grade. You have to know the age group and the grade level, because there are developmental theory, science that backs our profession, that allows us to be effective in this really difficult sort of hypothesis that we do with our lessons, where we create an objective of what the students will achieve and learn and master, despite all of the variation that we have. And the reason we're able to do it is by utilizing this pedagogical knowledge, right? This knowledge of developmental theories, descriptors of the students and how their brain works and how they learn, how they see the world, how they understand the world best. And these are all scientifically proven, how they build their social emotional stability in order to not be jerks when they're older, or not have severe self-esteem issues. Like, we know the science behind it. And so we also know how to plan accordingly. We're talking about 5 and 6-year-olds for kinder. It is known that kindergartners, especially through 2nd grade, 3rd grade, they start coming into their, a little bit more mature as far as having a longer attention span. Kindergartners get very tired easily. They get bored easily. We wouldn't have 45-minute blocks where they were just given a direct instruction and then put into groups of cooperative learning in kindergarten, because that is way above lots of things that it would be way above. First of all, cognitively, they're not on level yet to have the attention span to listen to a lecture, direct instruction only. They probably don't know how to read. Not probably, they don't. So that's above their level. Emotionally, sort of like maturity wise, in a cooperative learning group where they haven't yet been taught how to work together through like easier tasks, through role play, through modeling, through practice, it's going to be difficult to get, academic work done in a cooperative learning scenario. So it just wouldn't be the best response based on the age group. And we have to make sure that we take age group and grade level into consideration. At the very least, it doesn't always mean it makes a change, but more often than not, it does. Do I have any questions thus far?
Nope.
Okay, great. Oral language proficiency. So oral language skills, oral language learning, oral language proficiency, which means whether they're proficient or not in oral language. Anytime you see oral language, you have to remember that it's not just speaking, it's listening and speaking skills. And so if they're talking about anything having to do with oral language, there better be some activity that involves the students practicing listening and speaking somewhere in there. When we're talking about questions concerning ELLs, if they tell you a specific language proficiency standard, the English language proficiency standard, like if it's, excuse me one moment, if it's oral language, listening and speaking, or whether it's reading or writing, if they're specific in their desire to increase a skill, and they will be specific, they're never not going to be specific about ELLs. They don't want you to know how to help them in general. They want you to know how to help them specifically in the different areas of second language acquisition, the acquiring of that second language. And so think about babies when they're little native English speakers, they're just listening all the time. And there's not this big pressure for them to speak, right? When they're barely learning. And some babies start playing with it and, want to talk and babbling. They're sort of modeling, mimicking, listening to the sounds, listening. Our students that are ELL students, they also, experience a silent period where they're listening. They're trying to get a handle on the different phonemes or speech sounds that they're now having to listen for and then articulate themselves. So understanding what's needed or what can help students with each of language proficiency levels, or areas, reading, writing, listening, and speaking, very important. Student motivation, whenever you see them talking about student motivation, increasing engagement, increasing motivation, we know that motivation can be intrinsic or extrinsic, but is that intrinsic motivation that we are encouraged to try to sort of ignite within them. And the way that we do it is by using their own interests or themselves to help further the engagement or the motivation. Use their interests. Use what you know about them. Maybe it's a cultural diversity nuance and you bring in a reading from that student's home culture. It will be a motivation to participate for that ELL student and for the others also, because they know somebody. Oh, my person's in class and we're reading a Nigerian author and they're from Nigeria. Cool. That's awesome. And a little bit more motivated. It's just a connection to something in their lives, their interests, the real world, certainly. And then another good practice or best practice to increase student motivation and student sort of onus or ownership in their work is to have the multiple choices, right? So to give them a choice, an option, and they'll feel more motivated. It's sort of like placing a bet on this activity and my ability to shine on this. And so you should have assessments, assignments, measuring a skill for students that can be done in several different formats. You know, if you have some students that are really awesome in their oral language proficiency and they're not, that like just writing essays isn't their thing, why not allow them to give you an oral book report? If they can articulate the protagonist, like, you know, the buildup of conflict, the type of conflict in detail with you orally, then that they truly understand it. And if that's what we're measuring, that should be something, because it makes them more motivated. Students like to succeed. And so we're giving them more options for them to show what they know and sort of shine, right? And that's a motivating factor. Everybody wants to shine. So if there's an option that's going to help me shine on something I don't even feel super comfortable with, then I'm going to choose that. And I'm probably going to be more motivated when I'm doing it. And it's, you know, science tells us that is the case. The class climate, the temperature in your classroom. It is the vibe in your environment. And you are the thermometer. You are the one who, you know, models the way people should be treated equally, consistently, fairly, with respect, and articulating, you know, truths to them when necessary, you know, about how it's sort of ridiculously unacceptable to make fun of people who are learning a second language, because they're literally using more of their brains than anyone at the moment. So all of us here, you know, teaching them to value language acquisition and be partners in that language acquisition. Like, they're not just learning from me. And that's what I would tell my students, you know, in the very beginning. And I would just sort of frame it up as that it's never not once happened in my classroom, because it kind of didn't. But let them know that it's in no way, shape, or form would it ever be acceptable, because we're literally learning language here. You're learning language in the English language, vocabulary words that you do not know, even if English is your first language. And sometimes we will mispronounce things. I still mispronounce things as a native English speaker when I see a new word. So it's going to be, you know, sort of a safe, comfortable place for everybody to acquire more language. And it can't be done in a room by ourselves. We have to be talking and be partners in this language acquisition, sharing the language that we know, practicing it with others. So going with your vibe in the classroom, you control the procedures, you control, you know, the sentiment that, or the feeling that a student will get. I've had my third child, Noah James, my second boy. He is literally the sweetest kid on the planet. Everybody I've ever met in my entire life has ever said so. Like teachers, his teachers. But he did have one teacher that he said, she doesn't like me. And I thought, that's impossible. But, you know, those were his feelings. And I thought, wow, that's because he's a very kind and forgiving and just like, but he was like, no, she really did not like me. And even if she didn't, or she did, she made him feel that way, you know, and that's not a place where excelling can take place. Luckily, I'm sure he didn't, you know, suffer, but I'm sure it wasn't the most fun. And I always make my kids make it work with their teachers, unless it's a ridiculous situation. So, thinking about it now, I probably should have been more like just finding the best teacher that I thought and moving them. But I just, you know, let the chips fall with where they may, and had grown-up conversations about how difficult it is to be a teacher. And she might not be, but, you know, feelings of the little kids are valid. And the point is that any of my students' voice that I made them feel like I didn't like them, man, that would really make me sad. Like, that would really make me sad. And I would want to rectify it. I would not want for my students to feel like I did not like them. And that's an extension of classroom climate, how you speak, the interactions, the things that you let sort of, you know, go on in the classroom or call out. I've been on supervisions, and I've talked to my students, and I've told them that, you know, listen, I get it. Sometimes it feels uncomfortable, especially if you're not confrontational at all, to tell a kid, you know, you can't speak to them that way or like use that language, you know, and you don't have to do it in front of everyone. But you certainly need to go have a serious conversation and put it, you know, because you send a message to the person that's being called maybe a derogatory name, pejorative term, run the risk of alienating, doing, it's sort of two wrongs with no rights. It's allowing the student to think that that behavior is acceptable anywhere, and that allowing the other student to feel like they don't have an advocate in you for safety if you're allowing them to be name called and they know you heard them. And I say this because, you know, like I said, I have been in a classroom before where, you know, the teacher sort of just like ignored and pretended like she didn't hear it, but I was further away and I heard it for sure. She heard it. Like she just pretended like she didn't hear it, which is like, the kids are not dumb. And they were in the 9th grade. So they're mini adults, and they're not even, the kids are not even dumb to our emotions and vibe when they're in the early child. You know, they're very perceptive little human beings who are literally watching our every movement. So we for sure have to make sure that we make the students feel comfortable, and that we remember that we are the sort of thermostat for that, making sure that it's at a comfortable temperature where the students can learn. Oh, wait, did it go too much? When you see kinesthetic, you have to think to yourself, oh, that's a learning style. And then remind yourself there are other learning styles, audio and visual, right? And so there's different ways in which people like to ingest, and then not just people, like they take up with it. It's our brains, you know, we sort of need it in order to solidify. And really, everybody works better when you are sort of doing diverse lessons that have a mixture of kinesthetic and audio and visual, because it solidifies and internalizes your the knowledge, right? It does that for the students, and it also does that for adults, which is why I tell you guys to take out your standards whenever possible, to try to take notes, you know, align what I say. Like right now I'm talking about kinesthetic. I believe that's domain 1, including, you know, the power of using learning styles in your lessons, right? To differentiate learning, to create multiple pathways for student to retain that knowledge, multiple pathways of understanding. So if you see kinesthetic, the key word and phrase should make you think learning styles, and this one has to include movement specifically. Kinesthetic is some sort of movement, and it, you know, it could be something as simple as cutting out with scissors different shapes, or and then gluing them in. That is a kinesthetic movement that does something extra. Even writing down in your own words, paraphrasing or chunking the text, is a kinesthetic added movement to your just regular note taking, or like an added feature. You're not just note taking. That's not the only reason why you would do that activity. It is actually to engage in a kinesthetic activity where your mind is having to do other things like move your hand, paraphrase information that you metacognitively already decided you understood it, which is why you were able to paraphrase. So when you see developmentally appropriate, it's kind of like most appropriate, but they're being specific. They're not even beating around the bush. They're saying it needs to be developmentally appropriate. Where are they in their development? The best practice for the age or grade level. Sorry for misspelling level. I need to get new glasses. Students are generally in groupable categories: early child, middle grade, and high school. And that's why we have the different, areas. We have EC, and then middle school, 4 through 8 levels, and then 7 through 12. So you must make sure that if you see developmentally appropriate, that the plan is appropriate to whatever category, developmental category they identified. Where are they in the category? Oh, let's not do that one. Okay, that's the end of that. Sorry, guys. Sorry about that. Well, man, I should have probably kept that up. That was from what? Did I close out my other thing? I've been having the most bizarro day ever. I locked myself out of my house today, like just out of my house, just with no way, with no phone, with nothing, no shoes on, with the dogs. So that was fun. I guess I not slammed, but I closed the back room door, the patio door when I was taking the dogs out and feeding them this morning. And like it's like one of the old school like latch things, and it just latched itself. And when I went back in, I was like, oh no, this is not happening. It was crazy. So that was fun. Okay, this is not it. All right. Sorry, that took forever. So remember, when you go in or you're doing your studying at home, I want for you, if you haven't already done so, to take a look at this ELPS instructional tool. It is my favorite for a crash course in ELLs. Some of you that are working on campuses, you might have noticed that they're doing TELPAS testing. That is the state assessment of our ELL students, our English language learners, and to see where they are in their listening skills, in their speaking skills, in their reading and their writing skills. And this PDF is an overview of and sort of really great graphically represented strategies and the descriptors for your beginner and the intermediates. And those are the ones that need the most linguistic support. When they say linguistic support, they mean language support. Linguistics is language. So please, if you haven't done this, certainly take the time to look at that. Again, reading the questions carefully. What is the goal? Keywords and phrases that jump out to us, and making sure that our answer, being able to bet ourselves $5 that our answer addresses the goal and matches the keywords and phrases, and be able to bet ourselves $5 that other answer choices are not it for reasons like not matching to the phrases, keywords and phrases, or maybe only doing one part of the goal but not another part, which we have seen happened. In one of the ones that asked about reading and speaking skills for ELL students, many of the activities did not have speaking, and so they could not be the right answer because we needed it to have both reading and speaking skills. So the devil is truly in the detail with these exams. Sorry guys for doing this. What did I get? All right. Let's analyze this. So, what keywords and phrases? Keep in mind, because they're going to jump out. Several students in a second grade physical education class are having difficulty reaching the basketball goal with their shots, even when using a youth-sized basketball. Which of the following options is most appropriate for the teacher to introduce to increase the student's success? So, what keywords and phrases? What's the goal in the scenario, and what keywords and phrases should we be paying attention to?
Increase the success.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? This is the goal here, to increase whose success?
Second grade students.
We want to increase the success of second grade students having difficulty with reaching their goal. Shots, right?
Most appropriate also.
Right. So It's not a key, it is a keyword in that I want you to remember that might have given you maybe one or two options that are appropriate. So we have a good breakdown or analysis. The goal is to increase student success. And so our answer choice should increase their success with making their shots, right? The second graders so allowing students to use a balloon instead of a basketball, lowering the height of the basket, raising the height of the basket, using a bouncy playground ball instead of a basketball. What can you eliminate and say to yourself, I can bet myself $5 that's not the right answer because this would not achieve the goal?
One.
Raising the height.
Okay, you are both right. So tell me one at a time. Tell me why raising the height would not work.
Yeah, it would probably confuse them like, oh, I'm having higher expectations, but at the same time, it just makes it more unrealistic.
Right,
And it would most
can't reach
likely
the height.
lose,
Yeah,
they'd
they're gonna-
lose motivation.
Absolutely, which is why we need to adjust something in order to increase student success. There was an adjustment, the youth size basketball. There's another adjustment in order to be made to increase the student success. Raising the height of the basket would not increase the student success, we actually decrease it. And you're right, you're absolutely right. Persistent frustration. Even in reading, if a student's in the wrong reading level and they're reading way above and they're coming into a lot of vocabulary that they don't understand, literally will shut down and not engage anymore. We don't want to feel unsuccessful or ignorant. So raising the height would not be it. What about one, allowing the students to use a balloon instead of a basketball?
Given the direction with the balloon is harder than the basketball.
Absolutely, right? The density of this balloon that's going to float through the air, they're going to have less. It again does not achieve our goals. They're going to have less success. There's no student success. This one doesn't do student success. And so what might this increase student success?
What is the bouncy playground? What is it?
It's the one that is like light, and I think it's
like a foam.
And but it isn't that the one that bounces that they use in Foursquare. I thought that's what.
Oh,
You know the
Those that come in different colors. Is it
yes,
those?
yes.
That we use like an elementary gym.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So those, I mean, I guess they could use the bouncy balls to bounce on the floor and try to make it in the basket, but like, does that help them be successful at basketball?
Yeah, because you're stopping using a basketball. So you need to use.
Exactly. We want to still be using a basketball because that's it. That's how you play basketball, is to use one, whether it's a U-size basketball or a basketball. This would be changing the game or something. And so no, this does not increase their success with basketball. Lowering the height of the basket to accommodate their growth and development, right? Their physical growth and development. Maybe it's that they're still very small, or they don't have a lot of like oomph or strength behind their shots to make it up to that height, even with the youth size basketball. But for the reasons you mentioned before, we have to rectify. I can't say, oh, you're just not good at it and that's it. We have to accommodate in order to achieve student success, and then go back up once they have built knowledge of the skills, right? And have gained more strength behind them physically in their growth. It's not that they'll never be able to do it. They'll get more, growth and development and be able to use the traditional size basketball. Any questions on that one?
Nope.
All right. So we have here a 6th grade class has just completed a unit on the anatomy of a flower. which of the following is the most effective way for a teacher to assess the student's understanding of the concept? So lots of words, important ones that I see. What's the goal here, and what keywords and phrases should I be paying attention to?
Check the understanding.
Check their understanding. Thank you for putting it in your own words. The student's understanding, because she's trying to assess, he or she is trying to assess. And who are they trying to assess?
6th grade
A
student.
6th grade class.
Right.
Yeah, 6th grade student.
So assess, and it's important whenever they give you a temporal marker for you to pay attention to it. Is this before the unit takes place? Is this during the unit? Is this after the unit? We do different things at different times. And so they have just completed the unit, and we're looking for an assessment. A couple of weeks ago, we discussed that assess means measure. We want to measure or check for understanding, right, of the concept, the anatomy of the flower. That's the goal. And we're looking for the most effective activity. And when they say most effective, when you see most, most anything, most beneficial, most appropriate, most effective, if you see that word, you should say to yourself, there might be more than one correct answer, and one is going to be better based on the things, the goals that the teacher has, and the age group or grade level, the other keywords and phrases that are there. So let's take a look at the answer choices and see if we can identify which one of these is the correct answer. Having students dissect a flower and label the parts. Having the students write a paragraph about the pollination of flowers. Having the students write the definitions of the different parts of the flowers. Having the students plant seeds and measuring the time it takes for the plants to flower. Now, really quickly, this is 6th grade, right? I'm gonna clear my drawings. Oops. And go, sorry guys, here for a second. So I want for you to remember Bloom's taxonomy. Best way of checking for understanding. Remember, the reason I bring this up is because there's a lot of action words there. Action words can tell us a lot about the type of activity that they're doing. If they are defining anything or describing it, it's super at the bottom basic level of lower thinking skills. So it's not the best answer. Pay attention to the verbiage that's in even the answer choices, because in the particular one that we're doing now, one of the easier ways to identify the best answers to look at the things that the students are doing in the answer choices. We're having them dissect, having them write definitions, having them plant seeds and measure the time it takes to plant flowers. Now, tell me which one of these can you bet yourself $5 it's not the answer?
Number 2.
Number 3.
Number 2, both number 2 and number 3 are just writing. This is a paragraph, I don't know, summarizing pollination, possibly, right? A summarization of pollination or a recalling of pollination, still lower level. Again, having them write definitions is recall. Having them write definitions for the different parts of a flower is not super high on the list of knowledge, comprehension, and skills. When you can create, when you can dissect, when you can synthesize, decode, you're going to be doing things in a more complex way. So we're looking at the completion of this unit on the anatomy of a flower and a 6th grade class, which would be the most effective way for her to assess their understanding of the concept.
Number one.
Number one.
All right, so why can we bet ourselves $5 that 4 is not it? Because I always want you to give every answer choice due process before we eliminate it for really logical and reasonable reasons.
So I feel like for number 4, that's something that they would probably do while they're reading the unit.
Absolutely, right? Yes. And they would identify things. This would not occur at the completion mark.
Right.
It wouldn't. It would be during. This would be something we certainly could do and see if they understand different parts. Awesome. But at the completion, having them dissect and for many reasons, right? And labeling the parts, doing the dissection itself is a critical thinking skill, identifying and labeling the parts in the real life plant, not on a picture, not on a post exam. That's going to be the most appropriate, most effective way to assess their understanding. And you know, they might have also gone over dissection skills. And so she's also, you know, examining that particular skill in this class. We don't know, but for sure, given the answer choices that we have, you can see why 1 is the best. And how even though 4 seems good because it's like, well, they are doing hands-on and they are doing observations, taking measurements, which is great for them to be like documenting and using data to like understand the world around them, something we encourage all the time, even with their own writing and goal setting. But it's not the best answer based on the specifics they've given us, the 6th grade class, the completion of the unit, and the goal itself. All right, so here we have a 4th grade teacher wants to help students become more aware of their literacy development and better monitor their progress in reading and writing. To best help students track their own development, the teacher should have students what? So let's not go there yet. We need to find the specifics. What are the keywords and phrases that you think are important? And what is the goal here? What is the goal for the teacher in the scenario, or the students, or both?
Well, first we're talking about 4th graders.
Thank you. It's a keyword is 4th grade. So 4th grade students. And what's the goal?
She wants them to become more aware of their literacy development.
Right. They become aware. Help students. The students build awareness. That's important. It's going to be an important part of the answer choice. I guarantee it. Some of the answer choices are not going to have the students building the awareness, but maybe the teacher doing something, or maybe their parents are involved. Whatever it is that we're looking for, without even having read the answer choices, I know it has to include the students doing it, becoming responsible in their literacy development, their language development, listening, speaking, reading, and writing, to better, and specifically to monitor their progress in these 2 areas, reading, writing. So our answer choice has to, you know, attend to that, for them to be more aware of their language development, but specifically too, for them to monitor it, to gauge it, to monitor both reading and writing, and to help the students track their own information. Again, the student is doing the work in this scenario. The goal is to have the students be more self-aware of their language development, where they are, where are they going. So let's take a look at the answer choices and see what achieves the goal for the teacher, for this fourth grade teacher, to help the students. So write as many grade level vocabulary words by memory as they can within 5 minutes. Complete a daily journal entry reflecting on what they have learned that day. Set specific and individual goals regarding improvements they want to make. Work with a partner to complete weekly running records. So what jumps out as you is not a good answer, and you can bet yourself $5 why.
1.
1.
1, and why? 1 and why?
Because I think it's not a good way to check the progress, because probably in the moment they don't remember many words, but they know it.
Right. And you know, reading and writing, would this help them with reading and writing? I mean, they're mostly just writing and recalling. This isn't helping them track their own development. This is not a tracking system. Write down as many words as you can remember. And that's just like a very, like you said, their blank brains in the fourth grade are going to go blank. They know so many words. They're not going to be able to reflect in this 5-minute time. So no, this would not be the best way to help students track development. She wants them to become more aware, monitor their progress through tracking. So what else can we get rid of because it doesn't achieve our goal or doesn't, jive with keywords and phrases?
I want to go with 3 because it looks like that's the teacher setting the goal and not the student.
And also it's not a tracking system.
Yeah.
Set specific and individual goals regarding improvements they want to make. They as in the student. So they would set specific goals.
Oh.
Regarding improvements that so they would have to reflect back on what they're not good at in order to make improvements and set specific goals. But I believe they refers to the student. And this one is complete a daily journal entry reflecting on what the student, have learned that day. And this one is to work with a partner to complete weekly running records.
So you asking what is the correct answer? Or?
No. I'm asking you to eliminate the bad ones and tell me why.
3 and 4.
Yeah, 4 for sure. If it's with a partner.
4 because
then they don't get to
it's a
focus on
partner.
themselves.
Exactly. It's their own development. It's not about keeping a running record with somebody else. It's me, myself, and I. So 4 cannot be the right answer. And that leaves us with 2 and 3. Now, which one of these would best help them monitor their reading and writing progress?
Number 2.
2.
3.
Okay, well, there's a divided
This one's tricky.
It's very tricky. It's very, very tricky.
I think it's because he says daily journal, so it's gonna be every day to monitor.
So I have to say sometimes, and remember this is 4th grade. So at the end of 4th grade, let's say we did a reading passage, we read today, and I had them complete a journal about what they learned today. And they might say, we read a story about a boy and his cat who went on a journey and suffered a lot. Would he be able to track his development in literacy by rereading his daily journals, reflecting? Could he track his development? Or would it be better for the reading teacher to say, for them to track a specific writing goal or reading, like maybe writing incomplete sentences with their sentence combining with their essay, or main idea, beginning, middle, and end for a summary, which is what fourth graders might be working on. And so they would say, like, I'm going to work on making sure that my middle section is enough and that I provide an ending to my, and set a specific goal for improvement that they can reflect on. It doesn't say reflection here, which I think is like sort of cheap on the part of the test maker. But I do believe, and it is the correct answer, that 3 is the better way for them to track it, because the student, in order to set a specific goal, they have to say, I'm not super good with summarization because it's hard for me to pick out what details are important to summarize. So that's a particular specific skill, having to do with reading and writing, because you have to read it to understand, like, what should this be summarized as, right? And so that, in effect, would be a better way of them monitoring their own literacy develop, how I'm becoming a better reader and a better writer. I'm able to sort of give that information after I've read it, analyze it, and respond back. Does everyone see why 3 is actually the best answer? And especially because regarding improvements, that keyword and phrase inside this answer choice itself, regarding improvements the students want to make. So we're always encouraging them to set specific goals, because if they set specific goals, then they reflect back on them. It's their goal. They said that it's part of that intrinsic motivation aspect to it a little bit as well.
Can I ask a quick question? I'm sorry. So,
Sure, absolutely, not at all.
For number 2, again, I think I said something about this last time. It gets tricky because with your responses, words like journal entry, then there was another phrase that was used when I was in your class last week. That's a repetitive thing that they say in our study materials. Journal entry, journal entry. It helps with metacognition. And what am I thinking about? Things of that sort. So for number 2, if it was the answer for journal entry, how would that question be stated? Because I'm gonna be honest with you, I would have chosen number 2.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I see exactly what you're saying. Yeah, that's tricky. And typically you're right. This activity here, it is an activity in helping them think about their thinking, right? Helping them think about their thinking, but not necessarily track if they met that skill, if they were bad at it, if they, you see what I mean? It just goes a step further, which is so cruel and unfair, that they give you things that are, you would do both of these things. You wouldn't just do one or the other. A teacher trying to improve literacy develop would certainly teach metacognitive skills like this one, but in order to help students track their development, having them do those goals, set those specific goals regarding particulars that they need help on, because it means they have to have gone back to reflect on things, their understanding. So this was an incredibly tricky question. And so this answer only did one of the things. It made them think about their thinking, monitor their thinking or progress in reading and writing, but for that day, not in the grand scheme of things, their understanding on that particular day, not tracking the development over,
Gotcha. So number 2 was a little bit more, it's not as broad as number 3.
Absolutely.
Gotcha. Okay, I got it.
Right. And so it is a sort of, they become more aware of their own understanding, right, of that particular reading or writing activity and how they understood it. But that in and of itself is not enough to help them track their progress. So their reflections, they'd be able to go back, and you're absolutely right. And I'm so glad that you pointed that out, because it's like really a good point. they're so tricky with these between the last two questions. But try to, in your own words, in one sentence, say what the specific goal is, and for her to best help. And this one, it might help them identify what they're confused about, because they'll write about it, what they learned, what they misunderstood, what they understood, right? They'll write about it in their daily journals, but they have to do that in order to do this step here, to set specific and individual goals regarding both reading and writing and their own progress, and then, set those goals and achieve them. So this was an incredibly tricky question that teaches us, again, the devil is in the detail.
Yeah,
So he-
I didn't notice the keyword, which is improvement. I think that one is the keyword for the number 3. But also, I didn't choose number 3 because I see they want to make, so like in the future. So I think I think that keyword, like want to make, is like kind of future, so it doesn't have related to the progress. So that is why I didn't choose number 3.
Right. I see what you mean.
Stephanie,
But it does have them, they make that they want to make in the future does help them a little bit become more aware that the literacy development, it's like this process, right? That we have to keep on developing little parts of it, and that they might not be where they need to be, or where everyone else is, or it doesn't matter. Setting those small goals and helping them achieve those goals through responsive instruction, right, and feedback and activities that would help them. And of course we would do too, but for the purposes of this particular scenario, it's not enough, and it wouldn't be the best help for them to monitor their development. They could monitor their development if they're able to achieve specific goals, right, that they identified as areas of weakness themselves that need improvement. So tricky question. That was really good breakdown, and I love the questions for clarification, because that clarification between that okay answer and the best answer is important. It's important to be made. Oh, I didn't like that question. All right, let's take a look at this one. One of the following, which is the most useful way to assess students' misconceptions about density prior to a unit on density? Now, before we begin into our strategies, let me just do like a simple aside. Direct instruction. Our students have misconceptions in all content areas. There are just like misconceptions or common mistakes, and it is our job as teachers to try to assess misconceptions on the onset and try to teach or remind students of common mistakes. I'll give you an example. In a math class that's learning how to do, balance equations and using negative and positive numbers, a very common mistake is for students not to remember to change the sign as they change, the sides of the equation. And so that's something that needs to be reminded, that you need to, have like a discussion about often, and continue to help get the students to make it common knowledge, second nature, because it's a common mistake, an oversight, if you will, and mindfulness of that and repetition helps the students be mindful. So we're talking about misconceptions here. What are the keywords and phrases for this question?
Assess.
We're doing an assessment. Remember, when we say assess, we want measure, or we want to check what is their misconception means what?
It's something that they have a belief about, but it's not necessarily true.
Right. So it's a misunderstanding, right?
Yeah.
It's a misunderstanding. And we're trying to measure our students' misunderstandings about density prior another temporal marker. Anytime you see a temporal marker, it should alert you that it might be important. This is one of the skills that we do. We always assess for their knowledge, right? We pre-assess to see what you know and what you don't know, because then I can know where to start. And we're looking for the most useful way. We see that most prior to the unit on density. So based on our goal and keywords, let's take a look at the answer choices, and we want to see which one of these is the best way. Giving students a quiz on how to calculate densities, having an activity during which students weigh several objects, holding a class discussion about density, asking each student to predict the relative densities of several objects. So you guys, I want for you to have a question, a discussion. I'm just going to go get a water really quickly. Tell me which one of these you think is wrong and bet yourself $5. I want to know why.
Question number one.
Number one. Yeah, because that'd be too in depth. And number three, because it doesn't actually measure, it doesn't actually give you like a specific measurement, right?
All right, so which ones are we saying? Sorry, I just went to get water. Which ones were we talking about?
We're thinking number one and number three are not correct.
Yeah, number one, give them a quiz on how to calculate at prior to the unit. That's setting them up for failure, right? Like, how is that even appropriate? Like, they know nothing. No, this would not. And what are we looking for specifically? Are we looking? Is the goal for us to assess whether they can calculate densities? What is our goal?
To see what their misunderstanding is.
Right. We want to know what do they have misunderstanding? What is their understanding or misunderstandings, misconceptions that they have? So yes, one is out. Holding a discussion, a class discussion about density prior is not a way to assess. Not the most useful way to assess.
Number two, weight. We're not weighing, but we're trying to get the density. I don't think
You're asking for the wrong or the correct question.
Are we still on the wrong or right now?
Yeah, we're doing the wrong one. Let me know what's wrong.
I think 4 is wrong because the teacher asking the students to predict. So I think for density, you need to measure exactly what it is, not predict the density.
And so would the students know how to weigh the objects, document different densities, having an activity during which students weigh several objects? So they're weighing several objects, but what will that tell you? What will you be able to assess from that? Will you be able to measure their misunderstandings about density?
I think it would be them measuring the understanding as the lecture is going. They're learning it as it's going.
Okay, because remember, this is prior to the unit. They do nothing. They've done nothing and had no instruction on it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's wrong because that's during the activity.
Got it. Yes, absolutely. So this would be during your unit, right? This is something you would do during your unit. You would have a whole lesson about measuring things, different way, the way we record. The best way prior to a unit on density would be giving them or having a table at the front with several different objects, and the students write down object number one is a water bottle. I want for you to guess how dense this is. What is the density of this water bottle? And here is a feather. Here is a bag of 100 cotton balls, and have them predict, like, do they understand density and the way in which different objects have different density.
Oh, okay.
give them different things. And
Like
then you would look
very-
at their, give them 5 different objects, and they would tell you how dense they felt they were, and you would be able to get a pretty good idea of where much of the confusion is.
So basically, number 1 is after the activity. I mean, after the unit. Number 2 and 3 is gonna be during the unit, and 4 is gonna be period of the unit, right?
That's right. That's absolutely right. That's the scheme of the lesson, right? So
Another reason, I'm sorry, I know you're about to move forward.
no, not at
Another
all.
another reason why I chose number 4, but prediction and prior are the same as well.
Absolutely.
That's what helped me. Yes.
It's also a higher order thinking skill, having them predict things, use their knowledge, even if they're wrong, having them predict, use prior knowledge and helpful information, and serves as a better prior opening activity to gauge understanding or misunderstanding than simply having a discussion or none of those other things. So let's take a look at this one. Of the following techniques and media, the best choice for a classroom with young students who are blind or have extremely limited sight is, okay, keywords and phrases, and what is the goal?
Your technique and media for sure.
Yeah, we're looking for a technique in media for a specific diverse population, right? And we're looking for best choice, most appropriate means that based on the specifics that they gave us. So we're looking for techniques and media for younger students, and they're blind or they have extremely limited sight. So we're looking for the best choice, most appropriate, developmentally or based on, keywords or phrase. So blending with pastels, cross-hatching with pencils, sculpting with molding clay, printmaking with linoleum. So what can you bet yourself $5 would not be appropriate? Best choice for younger kids who are blind or extremely limited sight.
Blending with pastels.
I would
Pastels?
Eliminate A. Blending pastels, I think, is hard, and you need to, it requires really like sight. This is going to be hard for them to do. For someone who's blind, it's going to be very hard, and then it's going to be taxing, like straining on the eyes of those that are limited sight. I had a student who lost one eye, had what is it called? Just a syndrome that she was born with, and it had a degenerative function for her ocular nerve. And so she, was losing one eye during 7th grade. And I really fought for her not to have to take, she was brilliant, fought for her not to have to take my reading exam, because I knew it was such a strain. Like, she would get such bad headaches, even though we would blow up her stuff really, really large print so that she could see. The fact that she was going off of, 70% vision in one eye only, it was putting a lot of strain on her eye, her brain, the existing nerve that was already damaged. So we have to make accommodations for our students, so as not, to help them be successful, but also not to, make it more triggering with their disability. Blending of pastels will certainly do that. What else can I eliminate?
Printmaking.
Cross-hatching with pencils for sure, and printmaking with linoleum. I did that in high school, and you have to use these tools to carve out. Like, they need to be able to see. Would be almost cruel. Cross-hatching, again, you need, I think it's like something like this. Like, I don't even really know, but I can't even do it myself. So no, sculpting with modeling clay, because it's a tactile activity and can be done and abstract and less taxing activity for younger students to use a particular media and to practice particular techniques given their disability. Does everyone understand why that would be best developmentally or most appropriate based on the diversity in the class?
Yes,
Yes,
because when you're
Yes.
when you're dealing with children who are visually impaired, they need things with texture for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's see. Here's an easy peasy one, and then we'll do this next one that's harder. Giving a written multiple choice final exam at the end of a school year is an example of performance assessment, formative assessment, summative assessment, informal assessment. Now, I didn't look at keywords and phrases, but do you see one that's super important?
final examination.
And
End of the
And
school
end
year.
End of
of the
school year.
year.
yeah,
the
end of the school year. And I like to say that it's just a final examination and it's end of the school year. They also told us that a written multiple choice is at the end of the school year. And so what do we know? What types of assessments take place in summation after the all learning has taken place in finality?
Summative assessment.
Summative. Yes, summative is in summary after all learning has taken place. Di que te fue bien. This is where you landed. And now we can use this as a springboard for next year to make your goals. But it's not going to be used to do responsive instruction or to change the plans for instruction. Formative assessments certainly form our plans, and this takes place before and during. So that one that we just looked at where the teacher gave an assessment, that measurement of misconception for density, that was a formative assessment, and it wasn't even formal. It was informal, that she just put objects in the front of the class and had them predict, and then took a look at their stuff, and they told her some information she needed to know and what she needed to plan for, what particulars she needed to hit on when she was creating her unit of learning. So formative assessments, they can be both informal and they can be formal. So a written multiple choice exam that takes place during your unit of instruction is still a formative assessment, because it helps form our planning and instruction. So summative, end of the year, that should have been the biggest keywords and phrase, but it's not performance because it's multiple choice, right? And it's not informal, again, because it's a written multiple choice final examination. That's more of a formal examination and not informal. So C is correct and the best answer. Let's look at this one. We have kindergarten students have been creating shapes using colorful rubber bands and geoboards. Which of the following instructional activities would promote students' progress with cognitive concepts relating to shapes? Lots of words, guys. And what should we pay close attention before we go in and get into the nitty-gritty of the answer choices?
Promote student progress.
Right, we want to promote their progress in what?
Cognitive concept.
Cognitive concepts, right? What else?
Creating shapes.
Yeah, they are creating shapes. Always highlight creating if they're doing it, the students. But what's real important that we haven't highlighted yet?
Is it because they're following instructional activities?
Instructional activity.
Right, we are
And
looking.
instruction.
And what else? One
Kindergarten
more.
students.
Thank you. So important, this keyword and phrase. Kindergartners, right?
Yes.
Age group, grade levels, important. So we have kindergartners and we are looking for a cognitive, we're trying to promote cognitive concepts relating to shapes with kindergartners. And so this is what they're doing. Which of the following activities would promote student progress with the cognitive concepts relating to shapes? They already have created shapes using colorful rubber bands, and the geoboards. So which of the following activities after they've done that would promote, continue, help their understanding, their cognitive understanding, that cognitive concept that relates to shapes? Let's take a look, see which one of those best does that. Displaying geoboards in the classroom and encouraging students to explain their understanding of the shapes. Presenting an example of an intricate shape to the students using precise vocabulary terms. Comparing students' geoboards during circle time based on characteristics of shapes. Providing ongoing shape exploration with additional materials for students to use independently. What can we get rid of? What screams this is not appropriate?
B, because we want them to figure it out.
Yeah, B.
If we're presenting,
And
they're
it
not figuring
sounds-
it out.
Right, we want to help them and increase their understanding. So this is presenting an example of an intricate shape to the student using precise vocabulary terms. Yeah, that's not helping promote their progress, right?
Display.
No, remember, right? Remember
Yes, who said A?
me,
Yeah.
Francisco.
Why would A be incorrect?
Is to check understanding, not to promote progress.
Right, not to help their understanding of shapes, right? So, but also, is this even cognitively appropriate for kindergartners to encourage, they're going to explain their understanding of shapes in front of the geoboard, in front of the class?
No.
I
No.
don't think so yet. We're not there yet. That's a bit above their social emotional maturity level. And they might get up there and sort of do this blank stare. We need to increase their oral language proficiency, and we do that through small group instruction. Given the last two, which one of these is small group instruction?
D, compared. Oh, circle time base.
Well, they're still not able to compare, so
I was
that would be wrong.
is wrong because it's comparing. Is
Comparing.
to check understanding that one.
Well, you guys have to know what circle time is. Circle time is when you sit around and you discuss, like maybe you had a piece of artwork. In this case, it's geoboards with rubber bands. And so I think geoboards are the ones with like the nails, all like the dot, like they just have like all these different lines. And the kids take their rubber bands and they make, because they're just doing shapes, but they're all going to choose different pegs. Like some of them are going to be over here and they might be different colors, and somebody might make a circle and it's really big and it pops and they realize, oh, it can't be stretched out. So they make it a smaller one. They're playing with their board. And then in this answer choice, they're sitting in a circle. It's this cooperative learning group, and they're just comparing like, well, you know, Miss Sauceda's geoboard has 3 triangles or 2 triangles and 1 circle. One triangle is larger than the other one. They're expanding their understanding. And I'm harping on number C because letter C, because C is the correct activity. It helps them talking about, thinking about how they put their own shapes on the board in comparison with their students, their peers and the teacher. Providing ongoing shape exploration with additional materials to use independently. Can kindergartners use independent materials independently? Like, let's say you gave them an article about different types of shapes or other shapes to even cut out. Can they do that independently at the kindergarten level?
No.
They can't. So D can't be the right answer because developmentally it's too above what a kindergarten can do. But we can sit around and talk about the differences, comparing at my geoboard with your geoboard and your geoboard, and learning different things about shapes, learning different ideas about shapes, and how to make them.
I think the reason why C is confusing is because of the geoboard. Usually, whenever we think of kids playing with the geoboards, it's not during circle time, and I think that's what's confusing.
Right. Yeah, no, I get it. They, intertwine all of our stuff, and we get into the way that we do it on our campus. But remember,
Yeah,
this is like a
a perfect
theoretical,
world.
right? A perfect world, exactly. So, in theory, you could go do circle time with the geo boards and have a grand old conversation, have all the time for that for all the different kindergartners, and because it's supposed to be able to happen. So remember when you take the exam, best case scenario, try not to think of what you would normally do, but what best practices and what the keywords and phrases are suggesting you should do.
Can you go back to the Bloom's graph, please?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, with the words.
Okay.
Okay, because I was saying that C is wrong. I understand why it's correct now, but I was saying that one is wrong because in understanding there is the word compare. So
Absolutely, absolutely. But they had to create first. And right now they're like not defending, but they're explaining or like evaluating, sort of like they're comparing or contrasting, and that's still the analyzing category. But I see what you meant. But you have to remember this is kindergarten, so that would have still been okay for them. It's not bad to do the remembering, understanding, applying. We must. I have to pre-teach my academic vocabulary and sometimes specific vocabulary before every lesson. If I'm going to be talking about new words and you need to know what they're about and visualize them before I begin a lesson, I'm certainly going to predefine those for you. That skill in and of itself is not a bad skill. It's a necessary skill. It's just that we don't want for them to always exist at that skill. And we certainly don't want to assess them at that skill. We want for them to be able to think a little bit higher. And so while they were not being assessed, they were practicing the skill, trying to promote it, having them compare and contrast each other's understanding and the geo boards, and they themselves having to articulate in the circle time their own understanding and how they applied that their understanding of shapes to the creation is what's important. We're gonna end it there today, guys. You have any questions for me before I go?
It was super helpful on my part.
Just to comment, these specific questions from today.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, let's hear them.
Were brain.
I'm sorry. You're cutting out.
I think were the hardest that we've done from like everyone.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? It was cutting out just a little bit.
Oh, me?
Yes, Giselle. You said about cognitive levels?
Yes. I was like, I feel like these questions that we did for this session have been the hardest from any other session that I've attended. I'm like, wow, these were really cognitive gymnastics.
Yeah, they really are. And so I put in there, or if I haven't already, I will put in this document into, I thought I had. Let me make sure that I did. Bloom's taxonomy, because it talks about different like challenging activities at different levels of cognition, like the difficulty of cognition. And when they're kindergarten, we're not going to do a whole bunch at the like evaluating, synthesis, creating level, but we certainly are going to try to create whenever possible. I did not put it in here, so that's not good. Okay. I'm going to put it here for you right now.
Was this the domain one?
Yes, I'm beginning to put together a study guide for you guys, and this for some of the graphics from domain 1. I'm going to just,
You have to make a copy.
yeah, I think I'm just going to move it because I already have like the original that was a Word, and so I'll just leave it there and change this one. Thank you for that. But so you can have that there, and it'll show you you know, the different levels of Bloom's taxonomy and cognition, and you can see it. That, and that's not to say that our students can't you know, create or analyze or evaluate, but kindergartners are going to be able to deduce or diagram very complex things. So the complexity of their cognition grows. Oh, hold on one second. As they get older, get inside right now. Inside.
So la mejor de esta era compleja.
Dog is outside, and now I'm letting it fly. I'm sorry, were there any more questions?
Yeah, you have time to the conference in your office hours?
Oh, yes, from 9 to 11 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I have office hours, so anyone can come in and we can discuss whatever you know, areas of need you have.
Yeah, because I just
9 to 11, what days?
Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 to 11.
Tuesdays. And how do we get into the conference?
There is a it's one of my Calendly links. Let me see if I can if I can find it.
And it will be through Zoom like we're doing it right now?
Yes, ma'am. It's via Zoom.
So I would like to schedule. I don't know what one of the 2 days will be best.
So I'm going to put the Calendly link for wait, did I do for all of them? So those are all of the available classes. Tuesday evening, Saturday class. Where is the office hours? Oh, wait, don't use that one. I sent you guys the wrong link. Oh my Lord. Sorry, guys. I sent you like the link to get into my like account. It's ridiculous. Don't use that one. Let me, office hours. Here it is. Okay. Sorry about that.
It will be like a 30-minute that we can be with you.
Yeah, sure. If however long I mean, some people come in at 10:30, some people come in at 10. It's just you sign up and it's sometime during that 2-hour period.
Okay. I would like to review some of the concepts because I'm going to take my exams Friday on the 17th. So I have this week to do a deep review. And if I have any misconception or any question, I can get with you, okay?
Absolutely, absolutely.
I hope everything will go well. I'm wishing myself that everything is going to be fine.
Me too. You've put in the work. So, you know, it should pay off. Remember, you need to remain calm, remember your keywords and phrases, be mindful of the reading. You know, I don't want for you to read too much into it. Read what's there. What are they saying? What words are they using? You know, Mr. Waldo, you pointed out that word improvement was, you know, sort of, so that there's a correlation always in the language. The answer choice that's correct will you know, use some of the language.